This is the Tree of Life, Season 7, Chapter 3. In this episode, we will be talking about the process by which a post-priori negation spatial non-consensual actor achieves a spatial non-consensual state through negation. To start off, every intersection represents an opportunity for negation or affirmation. In the rejection of an affirmatory narrative from the other, or in the post-priori negation of one of the variants of direct ground represented by the reciprocation of an exchange, we see the loosening of associations within an archetypal constellation. That is to say, the negation can be post-priori, that is, negating the experience which was common, or one variant of it. Or two, it can be a priori, in that the negation is directly in response to the affirmational narrative of the other. But both forms of negation, although associated with distinct types of spatial non-consensual state, post-priori, or a priori, represent the loosening of associations within an archetypal constellation. Now, with respect to an archetypal generated spatial non-consensual actor, or a post-priori negation actor, we can see that in response to the vacuum created in an archetypal constellation, another actor, who is heretofore outside their constellation, will expectation match, that is, affirm the indirect ground experiences underlying the negational structure, rendering it affirmational, or incorporating it into their existing affirmational structure. In other words, negation produces a vacuum by loosening associations within an archetypal constellation, and the natural response of this is the involvement of some new actor to affirm the indirect ground, or negational experience, which is foundational to the negational structure. Once this occurs, the post-priori negational individual returns to an archetypal consensual state, and the cycle starts over again. Which is to say, only in a priori negational individual can stabilize in a spatial non-consensual state, because their negation precedes their action. By preceding their action, this negation represents too little time for another individual to get involved to meet the non-consensual expectations of the actor, to self-attribute, then affirm the underlying experiences which generated the negational structure. In other words, post-priori negational individuals, or spatial non-consensual actors, cause proliferation of experiences which are outside the conjoined consensuality, representing a broadening of that consensuality. Likewise, this shows us that a negational structure remains negating, or isolating, only so long as the contingent experiences, or indirect ground experiences, remain unaffirmed. When those experiences become affirmed by expectation matching by some other caused by the spatial non-consensual state, the result is incorporation of the negational structure into the affirmational structure represented by the adding and integration of another person into the archetypal structure of a post-priori negational actor. On the balance, we can see thus that the inflowing of the consciousness of the other, through self-consciousness created by affirmation, follows the plugging of the vacuum created by negation, which prevents the outflow of concealed impulses, spatial mapping, through consciousness by need. Finally, we can say thus that the sublimating process, by which associations are loosened through negation, is very much like mutation in a selection process for the development of a negational structure. The effect of sublimation, through the deferral of the expectations of the other, in the negational process, represents the generation of new language describing the spatial world, as a manifestation of spatial mapping. This language is then reincorporated into an archetypal structure through the integration of another individual into the vacuum created by the negation. From all of this we can see that the injection of affirmation into a negational structure, or a hybrid structure, can occur directly via affirmation of experiences, or direct ground, reciprocated experiences, or it can occur via the incorporation of new individuals into one's archetypal constellation further to the affirmation of a contingent experience which previously formed a part of the negational structure. That's the end of the podcast for today.